Hi, everybody. Are you guys awake or what? Like, how's it? All right. So I'll repeat this at the end if you want to contact me, and of course, Dr. Harold will connect you as well. But what I did was, Harold talked a lot. I mean, a lot. I mean, you've met him. He's talked a lot about what's going on here at Kalamazoo. And so what I did was I put together this mixture. Can you see it all?
No.
Oh, great. Let's do that. I put together this mixture, how about now? Of just ideas and stuff. And you might be wondering, where's he going with this? And just bear with me. I get to a point eventually. And then I want to kind of build up and explain the kind of foundation of Living Building Challenge and what it represents beyond what you probably already know. And I want to start with a video that kind of sets the tone for where my thinking is here in the 16th year of the 21st century, based on what I get to see and witness every day. And it goes like this.
Hello, I'm Martin Sheen, and I'm afraid if you're watching this, the end times are upon us. Whether because of war, disease, or a genetically modified dinosaur, our world is now only moments away from total annihilation. So, let's take these last few moments to celebrate the greatest things about humanity's time on Earth. We had a good run, didn't we? We harnessed fire, invented languages, and engineered transparent underwater tunnels simply because we felt like looking at shark tummies. We were the first species to evolve to walk on two legs, and then invented a way not to. But perhaps humanity's greatest achievement of all was our total domination of every other species. Nice try, lions. Unless, of course, we're all dying because lions evolved and conquered the human race, in which case, well played, lions. In conclusion, don't be sad over what we're losing. Instead, think fondly of what we had. So let's give thanks to peanut butter, to water slides, to the night sky, to the Beatles and the pyramids, to that YouTube video of Kelsey Grammer falling off a stage.
UN interpreter.
We did things that few thought possible. We mastered the art of the yo-yo and had a cereal that was nothing but cookies. We invented the automobile and then invented an automobile that could drive over 20 other automobiles. We made backpacks that looked like animals and then had those same animals wear them. We set magnificently pointless world records. We mastered relative time and hammer time. We developed string theory and string cheese. And you know what else? We went to the moon. So now, before we're all vaporized or whatever awaits us, I think it's fitting that the last thing we all see is this sick basketball shot. We did. This is Martin Sheen. Over and out.
All right, so that's kind of where my head's at right now. And in 1970, the Beatles broke up, and then 9 months later, I was born. And I still blame my mother for some reason. I don't know why. And I grew up in inner city Philadelphia in a wooden box with fake brick on the outside, stucco made to look like brick, and then fake shutters. And in this context, I decided I wanted to be an architect. And my life, just because of my age, parallels the modern environmental movement that basically started around the same time. And I remember being a kid and McDonald's introducing the first Happy Meal. And it was exciting for a kid, it's an exciting time. And then 3 days later, 3 Mile Island blew up. And they've got to be connected, right? They've got to somehow be connected. And then I remember at that same time going to see this building. And it's a building by Frank Lloyd Wright. It's his only building in Philadelphia. And it's a synagogue. And I remember sitting there realizing that buildings could be more than fake little boxes. I remember sitting there and seeing birds fly overhead and then seeing their shadows pass along the floor. And at once, everybody in the room, we were connected to each other and to something greater than ourselves, right? And that's the power of architecture. And then really for the rest of my life and career, I focused on how to connect what nature does seemingly effortlessly into what we design and build, because nature's an incredible designer and we have a wealth of information to learn from. But then when I went to architecture school, the reality was different. It was very different because the way we build is disconnected entirely from all that, and it's very wasteful. The act of building is one of the most wasteful things we do on the planet. Every year we produce 3 tons of concrete for every single person on the planet. For every year we cut down 2 trees for every single person on Earth. And every year we produce 600 pounds of steel for every single person just here in the US. And powering all this is not karma or good vibes, it's fossil fuels, just massive amounts of fossil fuels. And one company, Exxon, is sucking 4 million barrels of oil a day out of the ground. And as much as that seems like an obscene amount of anything, it's nothing compared to the 92 million that all the oil companies suck out of the ground every single day. And if you show this to a child, even a child would say, well, that can't continue, right? That's not sustainable. Sheikh Ahmadi famously said that the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. The oil age isn't going to end because we run out of oil. It's just going to get harder and harder to get, more and more difficult. And that's what we've been experiencing for 40 years now. And nature's just been this casualty on the road to progress. And I mean, I could understand it if everything was great, but we're just surrounded by failure. Just everything is terrible. The way it's like there's obvious design failures, which clearly don't work, but then there are these kind of regulatory failures that leave this debris in the environment, and then we as a species, we don't make connections between ideas and how things work, and then as a result, we're left with these things that just are dangerous and kind of send the wrong message, and we're very litigious and fear-based, and so we have warning labels on everything that should be obvious, I would think, to a lot of people. If you're going to have gnashing metal teeth near your groin, that you would know not to, and just everything's done badly and amateurishly in my mind. You know, the other day I was looking at this bottle of mouthwash, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" Like, she's done, you know. She's like, "What are you doing now?" And I'm like, "Come here, come here, come here." It says it's 24-hour protection. But that never came up in a meeting. Like, nobody said, that doesn't make any sense. So that's what I mean. If everything was great and beautiful, I could put up with a little environmental degradation, but it's not. Buildings are awful, most of them. They're like, someone designed this and then drew it and then submitted it for permit, and it got approved and then built. And this is, I mean, I call it the architectural crotch shot, essentially. And building codes don't help. Most building codes are just reactionary. They're a history of failure. If you read the building code correctly, it's like a macabre, like Stephen King novel, essentially, of, yeah, there are people in this room and there were no exit signs and everybody died. And then, oh, there were all these people in the room and there was a fire and doors swung the other way, so everybody died. And then there were no staircases or they were too narrow and everybody died. Like, it's just death, death, death all the way through it. And the building code reacts to this, but then never goes back to question itself or revisit itself. And so as a result, the building codes are inherently wasteful, and they lose the intent of what they were for. Not all of you are going to understand this photo or what's wrong with it. But you see, here, I'll explain. There's a balcony, but there's no way to get to the balcony. There's no anything. But the building inspector said, oh, you got to have a railing at 3'6" for nobody. Just basically nobody. It's bizarre. This is in Tiburon, outside of San Francisco. And so, if everything was great, okay, then fine, well, I deal with nature, but it's not, nature just gets like slapped at every turn. So I would argue that environmentalism has failed, that 45 years of environmentalism, and we've ended up basically in the same place we were trying to prevent. I mean, we've slowed it down, but if you don't believe me, just look at recycling rates in this country and you'll see what I mean is we're still arguing with people about things that should be obvious, and the impact just keeps on coming. Just in my lifetime, global wildlife population has been cut in half. So we're not winning by any means. Just last year, we lost 22 species to extinction. 22 species never to return. And we should know better. You'd think by now we would, but we don't. I made this list of all the things that mankind is the #1 killer of. And it's a long list, and you guys are smarter than me, so you already know what we're #1 killer of whales and of seals and of polar bears. You already know that. We're also #1 killer of fish. We're #1 killer of the rainforest. #1 killer of invasive species, including animal species. You could argue we're #1 killer of the earth, really. Just based on our general approach and attitude towards everything. We're also #1 killer of jokes, big joke killers, huge, and then huge buzz killers, big buzz killers. I mean, you're gonna know this guy. And the weirdest part is, we're #1 killer of each other. Like a lion's not gonna come through the door. I mean, the biggest threat to you right now is that guy sitting next to you. Basically, it's the biggest threat to you. And so we can kill each other. And then, by the way, the #2 killer of man is sandwiches, oddly enough. Like sandwiches and carbs and pasta and stuff like that. So what we have is this kind of appetite for destruction, this conditioning that to create you must destroy, and we're going to just ignore all of nature and history in the process, and just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And whatever gets in our way, we're just going to plow right through it. It's just this idea that just brute force is the answer to everything. And it isn't. It doesn't work because it leaves all of these other things that we externalize and don't take into account. This goes on for half an hour, by the way, so experience. We decided somewhere along the way, mankind decided that we would rather drink hot coffee in a cold room in the middle of summer than have other animals around, like alive and stuff. That's what we decided, essentially. And then we never went back to vote on if that was a good idea or not. And we environmentalists don't help, because environmentalists are annoying. I don't know if you've talked. I mean, I'm annoying. People don't invite me over for dinner. Who wants to be around us? We're downers, and we kind of have this competition going that kind of is like this.
Hey there, neighbor.
Oh, hey. It's Asher, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know, I think there might be something wrong with your air conditioner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to be running a lot, even when it's kind of cool outside.
Oh, no, my partner runs a little hot, so.
Not as hot as our planet. Sorry, I don't mean to be that guy. It's just, we're all in this together.
Yeah, I drive a Prius, so.
And that's a nice little gesture. My car runs on reclaimed cooking oil. I have some literature if you want it.
That's okay, save the paper.
I haven't printed anything since 2004. I was going to email you.
On your power-hungry computer?
My entire house is solar-powered. I sell energy back to the grid and use that money to save polar bears.
I'm an environmental lawyer, so, I'm pretty green.
So is your lawn.
So, kind of, like there are times when I hear myself and I want to punch myself in the face because we're annoying. And sometimes you think the only solution that environmentalists will accept is this one. And this one doesn't work for me. Like, this is not a scalable solution, as we would say. And I think the problem is that we as a species have become disconnected from our reality. We as a species have forgotten an important, vital part of our humanity, which is shame. Because humans don't have shame anymore. I mean, you've seen reality television. There's no shame. My dog's brain is like smaller than my fist, but it understands shame when it does something wrong. It does something wrong and it feels bad about it. People don't do that anymore. People don't feel shame. What's the matter? Oh. And this is the old executive office building in Washington, D.C. It's right next door to the White House, although you never really get to see it in photos. The White House is right behind it. And at the time it was built, Mark Twain called it the ugliest building in America. And it was designed by this man named Alfred Mullins. And you all know Alfred from his haircuts, right? And Mr. Mullet felt such shame at the criticism he received for designing the world's ugliest building that he killed himself. And there's a few architects that I wish would follow his example. Not all, just a couple that maybe would follow his example a little bit, because I can't believe what we're building. We know better. We can do better. We don't need to build ugly, toxic buildings anymore. We don't need to build these weird things that miss opportunities to connect us to something better. We can, frankly, do better. And incrementalism is not going to help. Being less bad doesn't solve the problem. If you're headed off of a cliff going 60 miles an hour, slowing down to 25, that's not going to change the outcome. You know what I mean? You're still going to end up in the same result. And doing it in a Prius doesn't help either. I mean, you look good doing it, but still, it doesn't change how it, happens. And so I realized that human beings, there's only 7 things that motivate human beings into action. And they're fear, impulse, jealousy, shame, and then passion, pride, and profit. And the first few are negative. But those last three are interesting to me: passion, pride, and profit. How can we use sustainability and inject passion, pride, and profit into what we build? How can we get people to feel passion, pride, and profit into how we do things? How can we open their eyes to see the opportunities for saving money, to feel good about building a better building, and actually making a profit from it? Because all of it's possible. A green building is a better building, period. So what are we apologizing for? Why are we so, can I please build you a better building? It's stupid. Just do it, especially given the impact that we now have on the planet and what we now know about our impact. The Science Journal released a study last year, and they found that there were 9 interplanetary boundaries that kind of help life continue on Earth, and most of them are flashing red. And I know this is hard to read, so I reworked it into kind of a dashboard for you. Basically lighting up saying, hey, pay attention, we're really past the point of no return here. And so it's very impressive that human beings were able to make this work. This isn't Photoshop, that's just California, right? And so it's impressive. Yes, you made that work just through brute force and ingenuity, but it doesn't mean that you should have, especially given that in the area between LA and San Francisco, where we grow most of the nation's food, there's a huge drought going on. And those people that live there are drought deniers. This is what their farms look like, and they still don't believe the drought is happening, let alone climate change. I mean, so if your yard looks like this and you still don't believe that the drought is happening, they have signs that say Nancy Pelosi is to blame for the drought. They politicize it for no reason. This is 135 years of climate data, and you can see through World War I, things kind of remain fairly normal and cyclical, but then around World War II, something happens. Everything just starts inching higher. And then finally, by 1981, we hit a tipping point, a point of no return, which is why the 10 hottest years on record have all occurred in the last decade. Now, the odds of this happening naturally are impossible. They're 1 in 27 million. In other words, they can't. So it's got to be, which is why then 2015 became the new hottest year on record. Then we have these are the polar ice caps. Now, every summer, of course, they melt, and every winter they grow back, but every winter they keep growing back thinner and thinner and thinner. So over the last 130 years, they've just basically gotten to their lowest extent ever. And we measure this, with data. But yet I go all over the country and people are like, you're making it up. Why? Why? For what? For fame? Like, why? It doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, all the repercussions that come with that, including sea level rise. I was in Miami last week, and their sea level's already gone up 20 feet in certain areas because they built below sea level, and they keep dredging the beaches further and further out, and they've run out of room, essentially. And we're waiting for this magic silver bullet, this kind of Hollywood ending that's going to solve all of our problems. Like carbon offsets are going to fix everything. And I like carbon offsets, but they're not a solution. To me, carbon offsets, they're like getting credit for all the times that I didn't strangle my wife. Like I wanted to, but I didn't, and I get credit for it. They're kind of like that. And so they don't solve the problem. What we need to do is just reverse our thinking. Instead of seeing renewable energy as this addition, we need to see it for what it is. Because we subsidize oil and coal heavily. So every day we're not using renewable energy, it's costing us about $9 billion. And that's the opportunity that we need to see. Not that we'd have to put forth effort to change, but that every day we're losing money. And yet, I go all over the country and people tell me that they have more and more trouble getting solar. That basically lobbyists are trying to make it illegal in certain parts of the country. In Florida, there are no incentives for solar in the Sunshine State. In fact, there's no renewable portfolio standard, there's no leasing programs allowed. They made them illegal. Essentially, you could go to jail for putting solar in your house. And then it dawned on me what the problem was, which is that human beings are stupid. That was the big breakthrough for me, was, oh my God, we're idiots. And I don't mean some, I mean all of us. We're all, I'm dumb, you're dumb, no offense, relatively speaking, we're pretty ape-like in our thinking. And if you don't believe me, we share half of our DNA with bananas. So that'll kind of put things in perspective of how dumb we are. And the other day I saw this bumper sticker, and I was in a rental car, so I was just going to ram them, just bumper, and pay the deductible. And then I realized you never see this bumper sticker share a bumper with this. They're never on the same bumper. And I'm not saying anything. I am. Climate deniers are stupid, basically, is what I'm saying. And we're very reactive and reactionary, and sometimes too much so. A few years ago, there was an outbreak of mad cow disease, and cows killed 22 people, and that's a terrible thing. But human beings kill, I don't know, 32 million cows every year. So I think we're winning, is my point. I think we're winning the war, if you know what I mean. And we're also we tend to be afraid of the wrong things. You know, when I was a kid, this movie came out that got everybody terrified of the ocean. And people still to this day are scared to set foot in the ocean. And yet, the vending machines are 4 times more likely to kill you than sharks, essentially. Because of dumb people are trying to get free candy and the machine falls on them, essentially. That's what happens. You're 2 times as likely to die by coconut than by shark, actually, just to put things in perspective. So we're just drenched in fear. It's kind of coming out of our pores and our butts. And if you don't believe that we're fear-based, tell me, where's the 13th floor in this elevator? Or on any airplane ever. We take it out because people won't sit in it, basically, because they're scared. And so what we have is this system that's very slow to change. We designed something a long time ago that wasn't designed for now the 21st century use. It wasn't designed to be recycled, for instance. And we've somehow made it recyclable. But it's not really. And we need to change everything. Postage stamps, for instance, it took us 140 years before somebody realized, hey, you can make postage stamps self-adhesive. What a good idea. So we're very slow to innovate or change things. And part of the problem is that we're terrified of making mistakes. We want to kind of dance through the raindrops and not get wet ever, mistakes are a good thing. I'm giving you all permission to make mistakes because that's how we learn. Edison tried 10,000 different filaments for a light bulb, and he didn't say, I failed. He said, I found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Dyson tried over 5,000 prototypes for his vacuum, which are amazing, by the way. I don't know if you have one. You should invest in it. And he said, I didn't fail. I found 5,000 ways that didn't work. We are very traditional. We love our traditions. In fact, we invent some for no reason sometimes. And some of the traditions are very nice, right? And we like them, and they're a good thing. But some traditions are silly, just because they're embedded. For instance, oil driller is a weird tradition. I went down to the Gulf Coast right after Katrina to help out, and people were wearing signs saying, keep drilling. They're afraid, they're terrified of change. And in the 5 years since Deepwater Horizon, we've had over 10,000 oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico, since Deepwater Horizon. So we haven't learned a thing. And now they want to rebuild it, bigger, deeper, and further out than ever before. So we have this weird mentality where we're arguing for things that I think would be obvious. We're arguing for things that a child can understand, but we've politicized to the point that we can't. And part of it is the words we use, words like I believe, and it goes like this.
Starting with, liberals must stop saying they believe in climate change or believe in evolution. Evolution is. It's not a matter of believing in it. I don't believe that water boils at 212 degrees. That's how hot it is when it happens. It's not ideology, it's soup.
So I feel like we're on the Titanic, essentially. And not to be overly dramatic, but I feel like we're on the Titanic, and you guys are the ones that are saying, oh, there's an iceberg there. We need to turn. It's coming. We can see it. And the captain is saying, no, there isn't. It's right there. But we need to turn the wheel. We can see it. And the captain's like, well, did you get all the passengers to agree that there's an iceberg? No, I don't need to, because I'm the guy in charge of looking out for it, and I can already see it. And that's what we've been doing over and over again, and just delaying, shortening our time to react. I was cleaning out some old files, and I found this old magazine that I saved for some reason from 2001. So 15 years ago. And they could put this on the cover today, and we wouldn't notice. And then I kept digging, and I found this old Chronicle headline that I saved for some reason from 1998. And then I went, how far back could I dig to find something about climate change? And then I found this from 1980.
That a coal-burning society may be making things hot for itself. Nelson Benton reports.
The so-called greenhouse effect is created by carbon dioxide, a colorless, odorless gas. In small concentrations, it helps to sustain almost all life on Earth.
So now, 35 years later, we've exhausted our time to the point that the cuts that we need to make almost seem impossible. They're not, but they almost seem that way. And we're facing a third or more species extinction. And the cuts we need to make are anywhere from a third to half of all of our carbon emissions, which is hard. So I used to argue with climate deniers. I used to go all over and I'd see them coming. They always have this smirk on their face after my talk. They'd like come up and I'd argue with them until they'd cry. I would just crush them. I would love it. And I don't do that anymore. It's not my place to argue it anymore. I'm not here to debate climate change with anybody. I'm here to stop it. And I don't want to spend any time debating it, especially for something that's such an obvious mess that we need to fix it. And it's right in front of us, and we're missing it. We're not seeing it, and we're looking for reasons not to. It's just full of excuses. I sit in these meetings with developers, and all they do is give me excuses why they don't want to do anything. And I just want to yell at them. You're just being lazy, mentally lazy. And everything's an excuse. Oh, recycling? No, recycling's no good because it takes effort to recycle. And solar panels, they're ugly. We can't have that. And then wind turbines, they kill, 3 birds a year. So let's just reject the whole idea. And then this is just fine, totally. The raping and pillaging thing with the coal, keep that going. That's good. That's a good thing. So they have this weird double standard that doesn't make any sense to me. I used to be proud of being an architect. Architecture was supposed to be a noble pursuit. Architecture, you'd walk in and it would lift your soul. It would transfer culture. We used to brag about how great it was to be an architect.
Architecture.
You. Very knowledgeable.
I'm also an architect. I'm an architect. I'm an architect. I'm an architect. I'm not?
I don't see architecture coming from you.
And now this is what these two gave up architecture, by the way. They trained and they don't do it anymore. Do you know why? Because this is what passes for architecture nowadays. And sometimes the architecture is insidious. It's like subtle and evil in the way they do things. And we put freeways through where children play. And we wonder why we have to put up signs to get people to slow down. And when we add nature, it's this sprig of oregano, and that's it. It's not thought out or anything. And architects, we used to be seen as problem solvers, and now we're seen as this extra expense, this, pain in the ass that you have to deal with, essentially, and for good reason. I get it now. We used to be problem solvers and visionaries that would bulldoze streets to make it better for the public good. We used to take beautiful places and make them better and enhance them with our ideas. That's what we used to do. But now all architecture, all of it, is one of two things. It's either developer crap or a big old weirdo. And that's it. There's nothing in between anymore. It's just one or the other. Architects used to be these philosophers, these poets, people that you could even disagree with, but you would admire them for just being these thought leaders and visionaries. And today's architects are, I don't know what they are. They're different. They're very different. That's Peter Marino, if you don't know, it's a real architect. And architects have basically just stayed mum on this whole issue of climate change, which we are causing, because half of our emissions come from our buildings. We're responsible for them. And we get obsessed in designing what we want rather than what's actually needed. And I can't tell what they are anymore. Is this a school or an office? Is this a courthouse or a prison? And I don't even know what this is. This is a spaceship, I guess. I'm not sure. And by the way, this same architect designed his own house, and it looked like it got hit by a hurricane. It's just very strange to me. I was speaking in Iowa, and I walked around this building twice. I didn't know how to get in. I couldn't get in. There was no clear front door anywhere. And even the big old weirdos, it's unclear how you enter this avocado, or whatever it was, kumquat thing. I didn't know how to get in. And so I want to tell you about one building that you probably have seen, because it's fairly famous, and it's the Hancock Tower in Boston. And it was built in 1976. It's a 60-story glass rectangular thing. And now that it's been copied a million times, but it's on Copley Plaza, Copley Square, on this weird little Flatiron triangular site. And it sits right next to this beautiful old church by H.H. Richardson, this gorgeous 1885 church, which, if you can't see it, it's there. It's being dwarfed by this building. And at the ground floor, it's a little better. There you see the gorgeous church on the left, and then this, monstrosity on the right. And from day one, it was plagued with problems, right? When they first built it, they miscalculated the dynamic wind load, and the windows started popping out of their frames and falling to the sky, to the ground. And magically, nobody got killed. And And the best part is that it's for an insurance company. Like, that's the client. Like, can you think of a better client than an insurance company in a building that's raining glass down to this? And then, so for years, they didn't know how to fix it, so it was covered with plywood, and they called it the Plywood Palace, which upset John Hancock to no end. And then, about 10 years after that, they discovered a flaw in the structural calculations, that in the right wind frequency, the building could actually just topple over. So basically, pick how you want to die. Do you want glass raining down from the heavens, or do you want the building just to crush you? Either way, the insurance company's there to handle it, I guess. And this utter failure, this unmitigated disaster, by any measure, destroys the local community, destroys the surroundings, and of course could kill you. The AIA saw it in their wisdom to give it the 25-year award, and then give the architect the gold medal, which is the highest honor possible. This would be like me giving a prize to your doctor who killed you. Basically, that's kind of the way I see it. And we just embrace this negligence. That's seen as a success story in architecture. A building that, by any other measure, would be terrible. And I realized the problem. It turns out that by living in these toxic environments, we're slowly dumbing ourselves down. Scientists estimate that we've lost collectively about 41 million IQ points by breathing in these toxic fumes that we surround ourselves with all the time. And yet we have to go to clients and we have to say to them, is it okay if I please don't put cancer-causing chemicals in the building? Is that all right? And we have to, I realize it's not my place to ask. We just do it automatically now. Why ask permission for something that you already know to be right? So all of our paints are zero VOC. Why would I even ask them? Because I can see where we're headed, and there's no point to it. We look at sustainability as this thing that has to be competitive on every level, right? It's got to be profitable and cheaper and easier. Otherwise, we'll just discount the whole thing. And I realize we're not Walmart here. We're not trying to get bargain basement prices. If anything, if you run it correctly, sustainability should be your biggest profit center. It should be your most profitable department if you do it correctly. They try to pit it, that it's this battle between, it's either nature or money, either one. And that's not the case. I mean, it's money versus clean water, but that's a different story. Really, this is a huge opportunity. Imagine capitalism that's able to support and encourage health and life and wellness. But instead, most of our buildings are just on this weird cycle of just wastefulness that don't make, we just keep pumping in energy. We build these liabilities, essentially, that just require endless effort. And they never, this is on a loop, so I could just keep going. So this is an opportunity for you to redesign everything, because the way we did it was a failure. And if you pay attention and do it correctly, this is your pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. This is really your chance not only to do the right thing and make a better building, but profit at the same time. And that would blow everybody's skirt up. I think that would get everybody excited, really, if you think about it. You need to realize something. Nature's laws are superior to human laws. Because first of all, they've been around longer, but also they're tested in this kind of vacuum of nature. Nature seeks equilibrium in everything it does. It turns out all the while, we've essentially been building this kind of dead, lifeless skeleton. And what we should have been building is the whole creature. Because the creature respirates. The creature processes its own waste. The creature adapts to its environment. And some of us we're scratching this, we're getting there. We're not quite fully there, but we're playing with it. But what I do know is that this is a dead end. I mean, it's a cool looking building, but it's a metal building in Los Angeles. That just seems dumb. Especially given when I've seen how people react around living buildings. They have a visceral reaction to them. They feel better around them. When they're around them, I've seen this 1,000 times, they actually reach out and they pet them. They do. They want to touch them. It's bizarre. We can't keep fighting nature. Nature's strong. Nature will kick our butt. Have you ever been in a hurricane? It's like we should be making things better, not worse. We should make a building that makes you well, not sick. And that's what's possible now, today. So let's build living buildings. Let's build the way nature builds. You're sitting here now, seemingly idle, but your bodies are a whirlwind of activity. Inside you right now are these big black things called leukocytes. And as you're sitting here, they're fighting off infection because half these people are sick. And their gross, disgusting germs are attacking you while you sit here, and your body just fights it off effortlessly. And then see these little shimmering tiny things? Those are little energy packets called cholesterol. and your body shoots them out. So, by the way, some of you have too much energy packets. You have to cut down on the energy packets a little bit. But your body sends these out to your cells. It's amazing. So your body's very much this habitat. As you sit here, there's 2 pounds of bacteria living on and in you. It's kind of gross. But your body's this incredible synergistic habitat. But your body's also this machine, pumping, processing, filtering, while you sit here, seemingly at rest, but you're not. You're digesting those burritos, right? You're regulating your temperature. You're shifting your weight in your chair for comfort. It's amazing. And it turns out, John Mayer was right. Your body's a wonderland. It's this incredible wonderland. I mean, some of you more than others, but still, you're like a wonderland. It's amazing. Just what you're doing every day, what you're able to accomplish. Every day your body's producing 50 trillion new cells to make up for the ones that have died. Every day you're pumping 1,900 liters of liquid, which you then pee out into a waste stream. Every day you're breathing in 11,000 cubic liters of air, taking the oxygen, the O2 out of it, and expelling carbon dioxide for the plants that do the opposite in return. It's amazing. And even as I tell you this, your brain's processing this information at 170 miles an hour. And holding up that big noggin of yours is a skeletal system that's half the strength, 4 times the strength of concrete and half the weight. It's incredible. You can even generate your own energy. At your peak, like on a bike or something, you can generate, you've seen the Matrix, like 2,000 watts of energy. And powering all this is not fossil fuels. You're not guzzling oil, but food. That burrito essentially is powering all this. And in your lifetime, you're going to eat 50 tons of food. So every now and again, eat a salad. That's all I'm saying. Just, mix it up. As a byproduct of all of this, all of you are farting 14 times a day. All of you. Last night at dinner, Harold's like, I can't eat that garlic. It makes me fart. Like, he volunteered that information to me. And I know what you're thinking. It's like 14 times, it's like a balloon. It's like this much. So I'm picturing a balloon over each of your head. It just makes me happy. Our buildings respond to none of this. They ignore all of this stuff. And then we surround the building with more dead, toxic, lifeless materials that makes a hot place even hotter. And then we just crank these buildings out and don't orient them to the sun or to the wind, and we don't understand why they don't work. And that's why it's always just teetering economically. Every 7 or 8 years, the whole thing collapses, because it's not sustainable. So let's reverse this trend. Let's build living buildings, buildings that are alive, buildings that team with life, the same way your own bodies do. Real, not this fake life, but real life. Nature's already given you a blueprint how to do this. This is called the Fibonacci sequence. You can take 0 plus 1 and keep adding the sums together. And it goes on, of course, forever. And if you chart these numbers in 2 dimensions, it creates what nature calls a spiral. And if you extrapolate them to 3 dimensions, it creates what nature calls a helix. And there are creatures on this earth that build following this mathematical formula. And they do it without permits and without building inspectors. They just do it. It's amazing. Because if you look at plants very closely and pay attention, it almost looks like they're alive. Because it's a joke. They're alive. They're plants. They're living. Wake up. They're living creatures. We're not the only creatures to build. Lots of creatures build things. This is the paper wasp. It builds its nest in a matter of days. It takes wood pulp from local trees, mixes it with saliva, and makes a form of cement. It can change the hydrology of the cement based on the humidity in the air. And by the way, it does it on a cool hexagonal grid. This is the weaver bird. It harvests local grasses to make its own nest in a matter of hours. It uses its own body as a tape measure to do it. And it makes the opening just big enough so the weaver bird can get in, but none of its predators. And it builds this in this cool tripod shape. And what do? We put up birdhouses everywhere. It's insulting, really. They're building these tripods, and we're giving them Section 8 housing, essentially. This is why they're pooping on your car. They're upset. This is a butterfly egg. This is an owl egg. Just a wealth of form and color and geometry and structure and mathematics awaiting us if we just pay attention to what nature builds every day. All told, 3.8 billion years of research and development awaiting us if we just choose to build the way nature does. Living buildings, buildings that grow on their site, buildings that we feed and nourish the same way we feed and nourish ourselves. And we're just scratching the surface to what's possible. All you have to do is put it in your mindset that this is a priority, that this is important, that we want to build like nature, that when we see something like this would give us a blueprint of how to build a skyscraper, because that's how nature does it. Nature is strong. Nature's tough. That's how nature builds. And how does mankind build? Just the exact opposite way. Just like that, over and over and over again. And nature's seen as this obstacle, this thing we have to get around. And we do it badly. We just do a bad job of it. And we make these dumb decisions that leave this just debris in our environment. You have to realize that no matter how many resources you have, if you use them the wrong way, they'll never be enough. Our resources have a value. They even have a history to them. And if you pay attention to the history, it can inform your design decisions. But instead, what we do is we basically label it whatever we destroyed. So here, at Cross Creek Estates, they just decimated the creek to build whatever they built here. And here they drove out all the wild horses to build whatever they built here. And frankly, I'm terrified to think of what they cut down here. It's terrible. Very mature. Paulo Coelho said that the world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. So the time for talking about sustainability is over. The time for doing it is now, because we've run out of time. We can't afford to blah, blah, blah about it anymore. I'm very impatient now, because in my lifetime, I've just seen us squander all of that time. If you build anything, it is your duty, I would argue your responsibility, to restore the nature that you've destroyed in the process. And if you're taking over an existing building, to regenerate that site and make it better and heal the damage done by previous generations. That's what's needed. Because after all, we have an infrastructure that's aging. We have a highway system from the Eisenhower administration, an electrical grid from the Eisenhower administration. In fact, an energy policy and education system and a defense strategy, all from the Eisenhower administration. All of our construction standards are from the Eisenhower administration. I don't know who this Eisenhower guy was, but he was clearly pretty smart. So let's reinvent ourselves. Let's design something for the 21st century. Let's be innovators again. Let's reinvent ourselves, because we're not getting any smarter. We're getting dumber. This guy's failing on 3 levels, essentially. And he's not going to help us. Basically, we're on our own, hat glasses in hand, all failing at the same time. Plus, it's a chance to maybe solve some other problems here in Michigan, right? To take some of these beautiful old buildings you have downtown, or in Detroit, or in Ann Arbor, or in Grand Rapids, or wherever, and regenerate them, repair them, renew them. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to look at old systems that seem inherently inefficient and start to question whether we need them at all. To look at old infrastructure and see, is there a better way to do this? And maybe at the same time, we don't have to drench ourselves in oil, which ultimately turned out to be a mistake. Maybe by changing one little subtle thing, we can start to look at things in a new way, in a new light. It can make us kind of question them again, because we can't recycle our way out of this. The old jobs don't work. We don't have lamp lighters anymore. We don't have telephone operators anymore. We don't have elevator attendants anymore. We don't need them. We don't have whatever the hell this lady's doing. We don't have this anymore. They've been replaced by technology, better technologies. Those other things are obsolete. And I would argue we don't need coal miners anymore. We don't need oil drillers anymore. We have better technologies. These old ways are obsolete. And engineering is not the answer. It's passion, it's enthusiasm, the same things that drew you to architecture in the first place. Because if you were to give this painting to an engineer, he'd come back with, here, I solved the problem for you. And you'd lose something in the process. You'd miss something. The sum of the parts would be less than it was before. I was working on this project for a developer, and I said, on the facade, we're going to grow food. It's going to be this beautiful vertical garden, and it'll keep the building cool. It'll be awesome. And all I got was just excuse after excuse why we couldn't do that. And some of them were asked, like, you can't do that. The homeless people will eat it. Oh my God. Feeding homeless people. Fruits and vegetables. What will they say? You'll be pilloried in the I didn't know where he was going with this. And I said, you know what? Calm down. Unless this crops up, it's not a problem. It's really, if you start seeing this everywhere around the site, we'll take the food down. But in the meantime, let them eat. Like, what's the big deal? We have a surplus anyway. That's what nature's about, abundance, profundity. Besides, there's other crops you could grow if you're that worried about it that'll make you a profit. Imagine if we saw these as amenities. We're producing commodities. Instead of building your condos and bragging about the doorman and the workout room, You could say, oh, our building produces oxygen. Like, what a great amenity that is. Our building produces energy. What does yours do? And so with this foundation, this basically sets up the foundation for why the Living Future Institute exists. Because what we saw was this incremental change that was going too slow and not far enough. And so we step back to ask the question, we don't want to be bad, and we certainly don't want to try to be less bad. Most buildings are bad, and green buildings are trying to be less bad. We're going to use less toxins. We're going to use less material. We're still using toxins, but we're going to use less. That doesn't solve the problem. So we ask the question, what would good look like? We want to be good. What would a good building look like? What would get us over that y-axis and get us to be regenerative, to be a living building? And so 10 years ago, we created the Living Building Challenge. And it's called the most stringent green building standard in the world. But don't let that scare you. What it is, it's a benchmark for saying, this is what good looks like. This is where we need to be. And it's a line in the sand. It's unequivocal. This is where it needs to be. So it's not only a rating system, but it's very much a philosophy. It's an approach to sustainability of where do we need to be as a species. And therefore it becomes this advocacy tool. It becomes this line for where cities and developers and builders and universities can point to and say, this is where we need to be. And it's very absolute. It's very stringent. There are 20 imperatives, which I'll show you, and you need to do all 20 in order to get the full Living Building Challenge. You can't pick and choose the easy ones, right? It's all or nothing. If for some reason you can't do that, you can get what's called petal certification, where you can build out a whole category just in materials or in energy or in water. And then if you just want to focus on energy, we have a net zero energy certification. And basically it's pretty simple. It's a paragraph. Your building produces more energy than it consumes, period. It's straightforward. And it's designed for all different building scales. Remodels, renovations, and of course, new buildings. And all different typologies, all different locations. And the requirements change based on where and what the building is. There's 7 different categories that we call petals. And some of the petals are obvious, right? Energy, water, you'd expect to have those. But some of the petals are not so obvious. We have a petal called equity. Because if you build the greenest building in the world, but it's for Monsanto, is that still a green building? Probably not. We have another petal called beauty. Because if you build the greenest building in the world, but it's ugly, is that sustainable? That's probably not sustainable either. And it's not, basically. What's the point of building this beautiful green future if it's ugly, right? So we have these petals that essentially do that. And these 20 imperatives are spread across these 20 petals. And like I said, you have to do all of them in order to meet the full Living Building Challenge. And that's hard. That's why we call it a challenge. We didn't call it the Living Building Cakewalk. It's the Living Building Challenge. It's... And when it first came out 10 years ago, people said it was impossible. That was the word they used. And now we have 300, this needs to be updated, over 350 projects that are pursuing Living Building Challenge status. Maybe some are petal certified, but maybe full, but over 300. It's pretty impressive. And you've seen a lot of them. These are 2 of my favorites. One is the Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, which is the gorgeous building, and then the Bullitt Center in Seattle, which is a speculative office building. We even have a pathway for affordable projects, because it's not just for everybody thinks it's for high-end, but we developed a pathway for how an affordable housing project, or affordable anything, could go through. We also developed a pathway with LEED. So if you're pursuing LEED, you can pursue LBC at the same time, because our standards are so much higher than theirs. So we've already essentially accepted, LEED accepts our material and energy petals, because ours are better. So it's pretty impressive. And we're doing water too now. We have this labeling system called Declare. It's a labeling system for materials. It's essentially like a nutrition label. And it just tells manufacturers, just tell us what's in the product. Does it have any cancer-causing chemicals or not? Just declare it. And there are companies like Mohawk Carpet that have declared their entire product line. And in doing so, it's kind of completely re-engineered how they look at their product roadmap. Because they're measuring things they didn't pay attention to before. How am I doing on time?
Good.
I don't know that means.
As long as you keep talking.
All right.
Quickly. I'll talk about it. You can talk about it a little bit.
Okay. So what we've seen is we know where we're headed. We know our history, we know where we're going. And basically we've been doing everything the wrong way. And we know that now. That's the good news. And we're going, frankly, the wrong way. We need to turn the wheel. We can't keep heading off of that cliff because that road goes nowhere and fast. So So what I need you all to do is I need you to set a bold vision, not an incremental vision, not a less bad vision, but a bold vision. Every building should be net zero energy. Because why hedge? Every building should avoid all known cancer-causing chemicals, because how can you knowingly put toxic materials in a building where your students go? I need you to be a leader. Stop being environmentalists. Environmentalism doesn't work. I need you to be innovators. And innovation's hard. I know it's hard. And I know this freaks people out. Look here, I can see your face. You're all looking at me. You all look freaked out. But I know people get freaked out easily. People get freaked out when they hear that we're spinning around at 700 miles an hour. That freaks people out. Or that we're hurtling through space in this vacuum of nothingness at 66,000 miles. That freaks people out, right? It's fine. I know that feeling like something bad's about to happen, but you don't quite know what it is. I know that feeling. It will pass. Just relax. We are smart. We are innovators. We are creative. We don't have to be fearful of this anymore. We know how to build these buildings. It's not like we're waiting for some magical technology. You don't need these excuses. I hear these excuses all the time. Well, they won't let me do this, or they should do something about it, or they. And I say this in meetings all the time. Who's they? You mean you? You should do something? I'll be in front of CEOs, and they'll go, yeah, they should do. I'm like, dude, you should do something. I know that everybody's favorite word is no, especially when it comes to the development project, because they're fearful of cost overruns and all these other normal things that are understandable. And you say, what about solar panels? And they go, no, man. And what about a green roof? That'd be cool. A green roof would be great. No, man. And what about like just using zero vehicles? No, man. And just everything is just no, no, no. Until finally it's just,
Oh, hell no!
and then they get mad. If everybody's favorite word is no, then stop asking yes questions. That's basic. So don't ask, oh, you want to have a green roof? Because they'll go, no, man. Instead say, did you want to keep paying for heat? No. Okay, great, we'll put on a green roof. Did you want to keep paying for electricity? No. Wait, what? Okay, fine, we'll put on solar panels. I know you're thinking, that sounds childish and pedantic. It is, it's totally childish. But it really works. You're framing the argument in a different way. You're putting the priority first. They don't realize, especially this university doesn't realize how much it spends on energy and water and waste. You probably buy steam while you're at it, for all we, right? Oh my God. That's nuts. Why would just blow it right back in their face? Just basically like, why are you still paying for electricity? You're putting the priority in the question. Don't let tradition frame the question for you. Clients have this wonderful way of BSing you, essentially. Clients will say, well, I heard those solar panels are too expensive. And all you got to do to shut that down is just say, oh, how many solar panels have you installed? Because they always say the same thing, which is, well, none. Oh, so you're just wasting everybody's time then? You don't really know what you're talking about. Just that's the 2 words. That's all you need, just to really kind of put things in perspective. Because I've done it hundreds of times, and if you do it right, it makes you money. That's the way it works. And this will upset people, obviously. But I've never been fired for pushing sustainability. I mean, I've been fired for plenty of other reasons, comments that I've made about the personalities and stuff, but never because of sustainability. This idea that we're not going to do something because of some potential backlash that's never going to come, I call this phenomenon frontlash. This backlash that they're afraid of that isn't likely. And as a result, we just do nothing. Nothing happens. So I need you to put forth this big idea, this big vision. Don't try to be incremental. You already know that we need to switch. We need to go on a different path and really set a vision for the American dream for the 21st century. That's what's needed. And that'll blow everybody's skirt up. That'll get everybody excited. All right, so obviously I'm here to help. If you want, you can take out a business card and you can write what you liked or didn't like about this presentation and give it to me and I'll email you, or I'll give you one of my cards, whatever you want. Or you can just, if you're shy or have a broken leg or whatever, then you can just email me. And otherwise, that's my time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the visionary work that you're all doing. So thank you.